So, Chris mentioned that we mustn't forget about AI, and I believe AI has entered into everyone's lives, and actually to change the way we do content, change the way we do everything. And one of the questions is, okay, what now? So our next speaker, George, is here to tell us what now. He's coming from Greece, and give him a big, big round of applause. Welcome, George.
Thank you. So let's do it. Let's see if we are good here. Yeah. So first of all, before I begin, I would like to thank the SaaStanak team for putting this together, especially Anna, Leo, and Igor. And thank you all for being here. This is going to be a session that's focused on content strategy, because that's the thing I've been doing for the past 5 years. Launched an agency, worked with a bunch of companies such as Service Titan, Toggle, Docebo, Sitecore, Guru, NordVPN, and so on. Some of them are backed by some very popular investors like Bessemer, Sequoia, and so on. At its heyday, the agency was about 20 to 25 people, and after that, at some point, I launched a newsletter, which is Growthwaves, growthwaves.com, which has now grown to 5,000 readers. We send emails weekly on Tuesdays, featured on a bunch of media outlets, and also recently started burning my money in SaaS companies as an angel investor. And so just a quick agenda. First, we are going to go through some landscape changes, which I think are important to just get some context as to why we are where we are. Then we are going to focus on a few pillars of success in like today's landscape, some final thoughts, and then last but not least, I will not go as soft as the other speakers with the CTA. This is going to be a hard CTA. I just want you to be prepared. So let's start with the timeline, right? I think that these like past 5.5 years have been, even more than that, have been very eventful. Starting with like back in 2017 when SaaStanak, which is picking up lately, sent their first newsletter. Then we had the launch of TikTok in the US in August of 2018. Then we had the first emergency interest rate cut by the Fed in the US, which I think was one of the biggest reasons why there was an acceleration and a sprint, which lasted about 2 years, two and a half years, which was followed by another interest rate cut, right? And the reason why this is important is because money was, cheaper, and so more money flown into software companies, right? Then this lasted, as I said, more or less a couple of years. We had the first interest rate hike by the Fed in March of 2022. Then Elon Musk took over Twitter in October of 2022, which kind of changed the social media landscape. Then in November 2022, ChatGPT launched, and this shook things up a bit. Then we have, just a few days, really, a week later, Perplexity launched. And we will see how this plays out in today's landscape. Then we have GPT-4 launched in March of 2023. Then we have in the summer of 2023 an algorithm update on LinkedIn, which for those of you who are on LinkedIn, shook things up a bit and changed reach, because reach up to this point on LinkedIn was really free and abundant. Then we had, which I don't know if it's important, but we will see. In 2024, in February, Blue Sky launched, so a new player in the game. In February of 2024, Google signed an agreement with Reddit, which coincidentally meant back then that Reddit would start being shown in search results more. And then Google rolled out AI overviews in May of 2024. And last but not least, in July of 2024, ChatGPT rolled out Search GPT, which means that users could conduct searches while on ChatGPT, right? Now, I would say that this period that I mentioned, these 2 years from the first interest rate hike cut until the first interest rate hike, this 2-year period was characterized, broadly speaking, by financial euphoria, growth at all costs. We had increased growth budgets, we had less ROI scrutiny, we had a hiring frenzy and outsourcing frenzy, maybe. And also, you know, when companies are optimistic about the future, they make long-term plans, right? Now, the music changed because after the first interest rate hike, we got into a period which practically ended the ZIRP era, which is a zero interest rate policy era. And now this, I would say up to today, is characterized by financial uncertainty, not for all companies, but you know, for a big chunk of them. Companies now are interested in sustainable growth, whatever that means. We have, in certain cases, limited growth budgets, increased ROI scrutiny. That's why you see attribution software picking up. We have a somewhat hiring freeze in some cases, and companies outsource more. And when we are not so optimistic about the future, we make short-term plans, right? Now, the thing is, we have to think about how all this plays out in the broader context of the evolution of content marketing, right? So we have 4 distinct periods here, which start at, as you can see here, 2000 to 2007, which is the foundational era, the era of SEO and blogging. And as you can see on the left, we have 4 like attributes. We have strategy, work, team, and tools. The tool stack back then was, you know, fairly simple. Like you had Google Analytics, you had SEO Moz, you had Crazy Egg, you had WordPress, and so on. And of course, the teams were the first like SEO teams in a way. Most of the work was manual, and for the most part, it was unstructured. And of course, you know, SEO was, which was the biggest thing in content marketing, was mostly technical and for the most part hackable. It was siloed and fragmented, and there was a lot of manual work for keyword research and so on. Then we have in 2008 to 2015, approximately, obviously don't take any of this in like at face value, we have the rise of inbound marketing and the content is king era, which, as you can see, the stack has changed somewhat, right? Because we have Hotjar, we have CoSchedule, we have Marketo, we have MailChimp, we have Basecamp, and so on and so forth, right? Now, at that time, we have the first cross-functional and demand gen teams, and the work is still manual, but it starts getting a bit more intentional, like we know why we do the things we do, right? Then we have, in 2016, started another era, which is the era of maturity and operationalization, where, again, you can see that the stack is changing with the introduction of tools like ClearScope, right? We have Surfer SEO, we have Asana, we have Ahrefs, we have Video.io for video editing and production, and so on and so forth. And here, we start seeing the first fully formed content teams, right, that are independent of SEO in certain cases. And work starts becoming semi-automated instead of like being purely manual. It is obviously intentional. It is integrated into marketing. And I would say that this may have been the best time to be in content marketing and SEO. Personally, I don't think that there will be a time like this, 2016, 2022, right? And then we have the last era, which obviously time will tell, which is from 2023 to 2030, which is the time of AI orchestration, right? And here, again, the tech stack has changed because you can see tools like Miro, Aerops, we have Descript, we have OpusClip, we have Lovable, we have Clay, we have SaaStanak, we have RankB, and so on and so forth, right? And here we start talking about, instead of like content marketing teams, we start talking about content engineering teams, right? And we have AI orchestration and content engineering as like the type of work. And of course, the things that like define the strategy changed as well, because now we have, yes, human first, but assisted by AI. We have strategies that should be distribution first, meaning that we need to create content and having the distribution avenues nailed down beforehand. And of course, we need to start discussing about hybrid attribution, because it's not as easy to attribute value to a content piece of to a piece of content just because the touch points are like many, and so on and so forth, right? So I would say that things are changing, and this gradual evolution is definitely something that we need to take into account in order to understand why things are like that in content marketing nowadays, right? Now, all this brings us here. And of course, these are based on observations, conversations with people, with clients, and so on. There is concern and excitement about AI, right? There is diversification away from Google search, even though it's still working. And we will talk about that later. There is concern and excitement about AI search engines, even though for the most part it's still guesswork. There is concern about organic social reach, which I mentioned earlier, with like certain events that were critical, like LinkedIn algorithm updates or Elon Musk taking over Twitter, and so on. There is experimentation with paid social, but also concern about the raising costs of it as a channel. There is an emphasis on attribution. Those of you who work in-house, you know how much pressure companies put on you to basically, you know, prove the ROI of pretty much everything you do. There is a realization that creativity is not just a nice to have anymore, and it's a must. And last but not least, there is this notion that we will see more of, that teams, content marketing teams, need to be self-reliant and more extroverted, right? Now it's not the time to be an introvert in content marketing. Now, obviously, we cannot talk about all these things, so I will focus on a few things for the purposes of this presentation. So we have AI, and we will chat about that briefly. We have Google and AI search, because this is a big part of content marketing, you know, at least how it was done up to this point. We have organic and paid social, a big part of content marketing. We have attribution and impact. We will touch on that a bit. And also we have creativity and extroversion. I will start from number 5, and I will go backwards. Creativity and extroversion, right? I wanted to feature Emilia's The Pit, but I didn't have any data, so I featured The Flow by Hockeystack, which was I think they called it something like along the lines of like the B2B, the Netflix for B2B. And so they launched it back in July 2023 with a 3K per month budget, which, you know, for those of you who work in marketing, you know that this is like nothing. You can't do anything with 3K per month. They did something with 3K per month, and what they did is that they launched 24 shows on topics around marketing, attribution, revenue growth, and so on. And in just 9 months, the platform drove more than 8 mil in pipeline, okay? We have featured this case study, and you can go to Growth Waves to read it. It's a really impressive case study, and it speaks of like how you can win big if you go more creative, right? And in terms of extroversion, I see some companies still insist on the same playbook and like just spitting out blog posts, maybe promoting them a bit, but not like going out there and going hard and aggressively to tell people that, you know what, this is what, like who we are, this is what we do, this is what we stand for, and so on. A company that's nailing that, and it's not obviously an accident that they grow so fast, is Clay with their creator program, right? They have this page on their website, which is the dedicated landing page to their creator program. And they have consistent, from this creator program, they have consistent word of mouth and obviously relationship building with people with influence in their industry. And of course, you know, that's why they have this hyper growth we all admire, right? We've done a case study for them. You can go to growthwaves.com, search for it, and you can take a look at how big you can win if you adopt a bit of more extrovert approach to content marketing. To that, I would add 2 concepts. Obviously, I don't have the time to go through them, but you can scan these QR codes. hopefully they will work. The concept of original content and the concept of the media singular. They are both blog posts, and you can go and read them and like see what's there for you in terms of like creativity and extroversion. Then we talked about attribution and the impact, how basically content marketing teams can prove the impact of their work, which is getting more and more difficult. The problem is that measurement for content marketing is to a certain extent broken because it's heavily based on last touch attribution, while in reality it's multi-touch. Measurement usually happens still on a blog level, which doesn't make sense. The impact of content marketing is, in most cases, unclear because other departments, like sales, they will not report, in certain cases because they don't know, right? But they will not report on content marketing's contribution to pipeline, right? Like this happens. And of course, this happens because content may not drive direct impact, but in many cases, it may drive indirect impact. And of course, the last point, while attribution software, promise to fix the attribution issue for marketing, not every company can afford a like 5 to 6 figure annual contract with an attribution software, right? Let alone that this software, like, attribution cannot be sold 100%, right? So the promise, the main premise is wrong there. Now, I will not dive deeper into that because that's not the point of the presentation. What I will say is that when it comes to communicating your impact, you have to start thinking more about like communicating it visually, because the person you may want to communicate the impact may not have the time to like crunch the data and understand what you're saying. So graphics here, especially consecutive graphics, one next to the other, may help. You have to use company stories like sales closed X number of deals this quarter because of the pipeline we generated through like this piece of content. You have to be obviously honest and transparent, and you have to stop using jargon, and you have to start talking in the other person's language, right? Then we talked about organic and paid social, which is a big part of content marketing today. And that can be done in two ways, two distinct ways. The first is the company, using the company's profile, which is something that I don't want to say 99%, but most companies really suck at. And then we have the employee profile, which many companies start to get really good at. In terms of the company profile, a great example of a company that's using its LinkedIn profile to like create waves is SEMrush. And I know that there may be some like pushback here. Yeah, but they're a public company and they have resources and all that kind of stuff. I would urge you to go to their LinkedIn profile and tell me, like, study their content and tell me that this is not something that a company with like a much smaller budget can do, right? Now, we've done an analysis on them and how they structure, like what's their strategy basically, and we published it on Growth Waves, so you can go there and take a look. And of course, in terms of like using the employee profile, many companies start doing that. Most notably, our B2B and Adam Robinson. Of course, the employee here is the CEO. And if you take a look at like this timeline, on the left we have a timeline of Adam's LinkedIn growth, right, for his personal profile. And then on the right we have our B2B, which is his second SaaS company, the growth timeline of our B2B. You will see a pattern, right? Because he started posting on LinkedIn with just 1,000 followers back in October of 2022. And by April 2025, he's at like more or less 125,000 followers, right? And you will see that as his audience and reach on LinkedIn and attention, either you like what he's saying or not, right? This brings attention to our B2B, and so our B2B not only grows on LinkedIn, but obviously reached like great heights in terms of like how fast they have grown their ARR in such a short time frame. So to sum this up, I would say that it would be naive to think that in 2025 no one from the company should participate in the social media. If you're in B2B, that's LinkedIn in most cases game, right? You have to take it seriously because it can drive real impact for the company. Now, the other point we are going to cover today is SEO, right? And SEO got such a bad reputation in the last couple of years. A big chunk of it, a big part of it, rightly so, right? But on a perception level, I would say that the damage has been done already to the point that companies really question it as a channel, even though it still works, right? The truth is the traffic is real, right? I know some of you, or maybe most of you here, you saw this screenshot about HubSpot. It's not just HubSpot losing traffic, right? And also these screenshots without context don't mean much, but traffic loss is real. An example is G2, which, at its peak, it was bringing in close to 12 million visits, which is massive. And then in February of this year, they brought less than 1 million visits per month, right? And of course, there are many contributing factors to that. Some of it is due to forum and community websites like Reddit getting more visibility on search results. Competition for commercially focused terms has obviously increased. And of course, search results are, I would say, there is so much clutter nowadays with all these search features that have been added and still take away traffic from publishers like G2. Another example, Stack Overflow, which at its peak was bringing in close to 72 million monthly organic visits, which is massive. And there is a typo here. As of February of 2025, this was decreased by more than 55%, close to 58%, right? And the problem is, in this case, that AI broke the UGC, user-generated content growth loop, which was one of, and I guess is one of the biggest growth loops for Stack Overflow. And how did it break it? Here's how Stack Overflow works for those of you who are not as technical. So users ask questions, right, related to programming and so on and so forth. And then based on like these questions, people with expertise, they will go and give answers, right? And they will give these answers and like users will vote, like was this a helpful answer or no? And this created an incentive for users to go to Stack Overflow and give even more answers and be even more helpful, right? And they would earn reputation badges and whatnot from doing that. But what happens if users ask less questions in the first place, which is what happened with not just like Stack Overflow, by the way, other companies as well, right? So the loss of traffic in this case is real, but it's not just traffic as I see it, it's also the loss of business model, because what's the business model if AI can just, plain and simple give the answer, okay? The reality, of course, I mentioned about like the damage that has been done to SEO on a perception level, which is significant. The reality, of course, is somewhat different because in 2024, Google was still the most popular internet service. They served more than 5 trillion searches and grew more than over 20% year over year. Active American desktop web users in 2024 performed on average 126 unique Google searches each month. So people still use Google for search. And of course, Google dominates the search industry with over 80% market share. Then we have also ChatGPT though, and this new category of AI search engines, right? ChatGPT leads AI search. And just to understand like how big the difference is still, in 2024, Google received more or less 373 times as many searches as ChatGPT, right? So it's picking up, yes, but Google is still the prominent search engine. And 98% of AI traffic is sent by 3 chatbots at this point, which is ChatGPT, Perplexity and Gemini. And last but not least, based on a study that was published recently, AI Overviews, which is a feature on Google, still reduces clicks by 34.5%. So it is real that websites lose traffic, but of course there is some perception element to that as well. SEO is far from being dead, right? Mailisearch is one of Minusia's, the agency I mentioned at the beginning that I've launched clients. We published a piece of content. It got the third position, I think, in Google search the next day. And okay, Google search is dead, so we don't pay as much attention to that. No big deal, right? But then a few days later, our client was featured as a top alternative for Algolia, which is what the piece was about, in Perplexity, right? So what we did worked for Perplexity as well. And then I think it was featured as well in ChatGPT using the same piece of content as a reference, right? And so I would say that SEO is far from being dead, but of course, again, the damage has been made, and I don't see a way out of this, at least anytime soon. Now, how to think about SEO potential, though, nowadays, because, even if it may not be the biggest channel, it is a big channel still. I would say that you have to think it from the standpoint of this Venn diagram, which is if you have an opportunity or a strategy that has distribution control, you have distribution control over the channel, you can get relevant demand there, and there is relevant demand for your solution or for the piece of content that you want to produce. You have a competitive advantage. That could be you have proprietary data and so on. And of course, there is click-through potential, meaning that the person who's going to conduct the search is not going to just read, get the information and stay there. Then that's your SEO potential, okay? In the context of AI search, you can start, of course, monitoring your AI visibility. A tool to do that, full disclaimer, I'm an investor there, is RankB. Feel free to scan the QR code, get on a call with them, just to take a look at the capabilities, and of course, let them know that I sent you. The last piece, AI, I'm not going to dive very deep into that because also we are running out of time. What I want to say is that we see big companies, one by one, making it explicit that AI is not optional, okay? Some of them do it in a nice way, some of them in a not so nice way. The essence is, and the fact of the matter is that AI is becoming a must, okay? And so if you are working in a marketing function of a company, you have to start taking it into account. And similarly, just as a mental framework, I guess more than anything, similarly to SEO, I would say the way I approach AI nowadays is it something, is the use case going to help me save time from a task I'm doing? Is it going to help me save money at the same time? Is it going to improve the output, meaning what I would do if I was doing that task manually, is it going to be improved? And also, last but not least, is it going to help me advance in any way? Then that's my AI potential, and I'm trying to automate this process and use AI in there, okay? Now, I will leave you this. I would say that now it's not the time to play it safe. You have to go crazy with your marketing and with your content marketing, especially if you are in more mature categories, like email marketing and whatnot. You have to be up to date, obviously, but you don't have to hold your breath over all these changes. Don't lose your sleep over them, and don't freaking panic. You have to go hard on experimentation. In certain cases, as I mentioned, a great example actually is SEO. You don't have to let perception and sentiment take over and distort your reality, because this is what happens in many cases. And you have to stay away from silver bullets and don't do anything that would compromise, the company's ability to grow in the long term in a sustainable way. As I said, I'm a marketer. I will go hard on the CTA. So you can scan this to get on a call with me. I will be giving up to 3 calls. So on a first come, first serve basis, okay? This leads to a call.com link. go there, find a slot, and book some time with me. And of course, I have some links there. We are launching a new agency, so if you want to join the waitlist, there is a link there. My personal website, LinkedIn is the best place to say hi. I can also share the presentation with you if you are interested in it. And of course, make sure to sign up for Growth Waves. It's free, and we send really, really good content. And I made it on time. Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we are done with this first block, and one hard CTA from me. Time for coffee break. See you back at 5. Thank you.